So welcome, Dawn French, and welcome to our audience at Inside Copy and Art. We are so excited to have you. Dawn French is the Senior Vice President of Community Affairs and Marketing at White Plains Hospital. Just as a disclaimer, we don't do work with White Plains Hospital. I'm just a personal fan because I had my babies there, and because it's a great hospital, and it's a walk away, a few minutes away, right?
It is. Very short walk.
Yes. So thank you for being here.
So happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to be here.
Of course. We like to take a look inside of the things that are important to us. So in our case, we know it's healthcare, we know it's marketing. Personally, as women executives, whenever we see a woman executive, we want to know how'd you do it. What was your story? So we're going to try to go inside and figure out what makes Dawn French special. We're going to learn a little bit about your career, a little bit about your personal life, and then what I find the most exciting segment maybe is the future. What do you have your eyes on ahead for your hospital, for your life? With that said, we'll get started.
That sounds great.
Awesome. So we like to start off with the professional kind of part of your life. We know there's a lot of parts of your life. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what you do, what a typical day might look like, and we can go from there.
Sounds great. So we kind of joke there is no typical day, right?
Yes.
It may be a planned day and then something happens and all of a sudden the 50% of your meetings are blown up and it's hurry up and get something done, right? Not familiar with that, I'm sure. So,
no idea what you're talking
so
about.
my role, I'm actually one of the executive leadership team members at the hospital and work with the clinical staff and the operations staff and finance and HR. We sit around the table and usually start our mornings 4 days a week, kind of going through issues and things that we need to collaborate on, which is great. I think one of the things in my role in communications is really about the messaging. So yes, the marketing is all the external, the website, the advertising, the digital that we take care of, but also part of my role is internal messaging, building up culture internally. And that in healthcare is really important because you want people who are not just checking the box, right? Especially the people who are taking care of you. You want them to care about what they're doing. You want them to feel connected. So that's part of my role. And any day, it could be different every single day. We could be talking about an advertising campaign. I oversee marketing, communications, community relations, and also volunteers. And when we have 500 volunteers, or pre-COVID, we had 500 volunteers at the hospital from I think our junior volunteers start at age 14 and they go up to, I think we had someone who was close to 100 and passed away just a couple of years ago, but
wow.
Right?
That's amazing.
It is. So I really believe in each of those different buckets of my responsibility. We have to come together because, as you know, being in the marketing world, we get hit with so many messages every single day, and what's really going to resonate and break through is by hitting people multiple times in different ways to get your message out. So every time we think about a campaign or the launch of a new program, everyone's in the room saying, how do we do some sort of publicity for it, whether it's media or we develop our own content and kind of send that out in an e-newsletter. What the advertising campaign might look like and how and what are the different channels that we're pushing on. How do we take the message and bring it to our other community partners and engage them in different ways? So what's going to resonate with different audiences? And so can we get in front of a group of people and talk about a new program and have one of our clinical leaders talk about a new program and make that connection, make people feel excited and ask the questions that are important to them. And then when I think about our volunteers, I think of them as an extension of our brand, right? They're taking their time and their expertise and bringing it to the hospital because they care about what's going on there, and they have their own sense of pride. And so the more we can involve them and educate and inform them, the more they can go out there and talk our story up.
Sure. One of my favorite parts of what I've seen recently come out of White Plains was the wellness campaign that you have running, because I know that hospitals have been struggling to, even before COVID, struggling to make their site of care a site for wellness versus sickness, which of course is hard. I mean, most people avoid the hospital at all costs and want nothing to do. We love walking in hospitals, but usually we have lights and cameras like we do here today, and we're having a good time. But most people avoid the hospital like the plague. And so it's been a challenge for many hospitals to position themselves in light of wellness versus, and I know you have a successful campaign running now, which I thought was just very well done.
Thank you.
So
thank you. We thought about it coming off of COVID, right? So it didn't feel right to go out with a orthopedics campaign or something that was more on our traditional campaign lines. And it was like that awkward time, right? So COVID happened, people weren't going to the hospital because there was everyone was sheltering in place and you were only going if you really needed to go. Then people were afraid to go to the hospital. And so what was that right message, kind of bridging from the COVID world to non-COVID world? And we thought it was really important to encourage people to take care of themselves, right? And make sure you get the screenings that you need to get. Make sure that you are seeing the doctor and you're not delaying care. And we do know that people, for mammograms, for an example, people have put off mammograms, and the expectation is that by 2025, more people will die from breast cancer than before. I think they expect 10% more because they're not getting the early screenings. And back to my morning, sitting with my clinical team. I'm not a clinician, right? But I sit next to the chief nurse, and I feel like some of that rubs off on me. And I know people to call when I have questions. And so if we're busy in the hospital, and I'll ask the question, like, what's going on? Why are people coming in for a certain illness? Are we seeing, like, if it's flu season, are we seeing the flu? Is it something else? And so it's really what we're seeing is people are sicker. And I think people are sicker because they've, tried to self-medicate away chest pain or, serious things. And so getting that message back out there to help educate them. So the campaign that you're talking about also has a quiz that tries to engage with people and then allows us to, in the marketing sense, send them more information because they're giving us emails. They're telling us that this is a topic that's important to them. So how can we be a resource and be an expert and help continue to give them that information?
Sure. So you mentioned that you were promoted a couple of years ago. You couldn't remember the exact year to senior vice president. Tell our audience, tell us a little bit about an aspect of this position that maybe surprised you or you didn't expect.
I think it's always a little bit of everything. If you look around the room, around the table, you have the person in charge of finance, that's pretty cut and dry, HR, pretty cut and dry, nursing, physicians, and marketing communications could fill in just about any hole, right? And so I always say, when people don't know where to go with something, they come to us. They come to us because we also know how to get it done. And so that could be anything from signage. I'll go back to COVID world or COVID time when we're putting up tents and we need directional signage and just something as basic as that. Everyone comes to us. So we're involved in different ways. Or it could be anything from our brand, right? So all of the different, I always say my role in the organization is I own the brand. And so anything that touches the brand the experience, the patient experience, really, I also have a little bit of a finger on as well. And as we built these new buildings over the last 5 years, whether it's the new front door and patient tower in the hospital, or the expansion of our cancer center,
Beautiful.
or thank
Beautiful
you,
building,
Yes.
or the new building that we just opened in this summer. What do we want that experience to be? We know healthcare. No one, as you said before, no one wants to go to a hospital, and we want to make it that you walk in and you feel you're in the right place, right? So clean, fresh, take into account all of the little details from fabrics and furnitures to artwork and lighting and everything in between. What's that first
Like impression.
impression?
Sure.
Right, the first impression that you give to people, it goes back to, okay, I'm in the right place. And I know, I can tell they have a focus on all the little things. So I know if I'm going in that OR, they're going to be paying attention to all the right things.
Well, kudos to you and your team, because that is a very challenging feat to get everyone kind of messaging the same message about what the experience should be when they enter a hospital in particular, where things can be so urgent, but just a corporation in general. So I think to have everyone recognize the importance of pulsing out that consistent message at every touch point for a patient is really a feat, and kind of showcases your accomplishments while you've been there. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, I think, I always say to my team, we're not looking to get out of the advertising business, right? But we need that air cover. We need to be out there, so when people make a referral, because when you think of how people get to a hospital, a lot of times it's your doctor. And most of the time it's your doctor or the emergency department. But it's the patient experience is what lasts and builds that patient loyalty.
Sure.
And what makes you coming back for your third child, even
Right.
though you moved away and there's a closer hospital, but that's where you choose to go. And that's something that I think is so important to what we do, and makes my job easier, because they're living it, and it's we have over the years prioritized the patient experience and talk about it and focus on it, and our brand motto is exceptional every day, and we hear that from the staff to the patient letters, so we know it resonates, and I think we really try to live it every day. And that's one of the things I'm most proud about working in the organization, is that, I believe in what we do, and I believe that the people taking care of our patients care, and they're not just saying, okay, I have to check the box and do this. But that's how you get really good patient care, is when you're thinking about it in a holistic way. So,
Well, and we say, we like to talk about, we're often called in hospitals, other verticals, and they want to create a brand. And our advice is typically, we should understand who you authentically are, because these days you can say anything about who you are. Eventually somebody will know. And in this case, I think exceptional care every day. If it weren't true, you wouldn't see the growth that the hospital is seeing, and kind of the brand loyalty that I know is very much. I mean, we can throw a rocket here at your institution, and whenever we walk in there, or I come across, let's say, colleagues of yours at a business event in Westchester, it's the same level of professionalism and dedication to the patient. So kudos, because so from a business perspective, if we could just pivot for a second, it's a competitive hospital market. We got a lot of people coming in, a lot of hospitals, a lot of systems making changes, a lot of New York City coming into Westchester. It's a lucrative market. Our audience does happen to be a little bit more savvy as it relates to healthcare and marketing, so they won't, their eyes won't glaze over as we talk a little bit of business. But how do you feel like, and so just to level set, and I think last I checked, Montefiore is the largest hospital system in New York. Is that still true?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not
When I
sure.
checked last, it was number one, and I think then there was Northwell. And it's a big system.
For sure.
So your hospital maintains a unique brand within a system. Tell us a little bit about how you navigate both worlds, the authentic White Plains hospital experience and then being part of a greater system.
Well, I think, being part of Montefiore has been additive for the hospital and for our patient community. I think one really good example to share is we're getting ready to open a cardiac surgery program next month, so October, which is really exciting. And so when you think about that, who wants to be the first person, right, in a new program? But it's not, because we have the surgeons from Montefiore who will be performing the cardiac surgery here at White Plains, which is great for a patient point of view as well, because they don't have to travel. And if something like cardiac surgery is very intensive for the patient and for the family member, and they want to be there with their loved one as much as they can. So traveling back and forth, if you're going into the city, takes an hour out of your day, depending on where you're coming from and parking, etc. If you can be there in 20 minutes and have the experience that we just talked about, that's the White Plains Hospital experience, and the quality care and the expertise of the surgeons from Montefiore, it's a win-win-win for the patients and for the community. And so it's been a little bit of that throughout this process. I think White Plains Hospital has been around for more than 125 years. We're a known entity for the Westchester community, and I think that's something that we were able to keep and build on, which has really been great. And I think that just builds a level of confidence with patients. And so I think the community at large know we're part of the Montefiore Health System, which
But it's not top of mind.
it all kind of works together. And so Burke as well is part of Montefiore. It's great just to be able to collaborate, and Montefiore has hospitals up into the Hudson Valley. So I think it's Nyack Hospital in Rockland and St. Luke's Cornwall up in Newburgh.
It's nice to be able to coordinate with other hospitals and to have rehab centers, right? Someone leaves cardiac care, now that you're doing at White Plains Hospital, they could now go to Burke, right? That's like an easy sort of transition. So with the system comes the addition of those extra components that may have not existed before.
Right, and it's great for a patient. We actually just did some market research recently, and it was surprising how many patients we did focus groups, virtual focus groups, and it was surprising how many people talked about having one electronic medical record. And you think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would never have come up.
Right.
But now they like the fact that I can go from this doctor to this doctor, and they know my history. They feel connected, and I think that's a great part of being part of a system. So
Absolutely.
Definitely. You mentioned your team earlier. I'd love to hear more about them. Having been in the marketing industry for a while now, what's your piece of advice or pieces of advice that you pass along to them as they kind of start out in their career or grow professionally in their career?
Yeah, I love my team. I have an amazing team. It's a pretty lean team, but we kind of figure out how to get it done. Sure. Roll up your sleeves and run really fast and hop on one foot and juggle and you know.
Yes.
So I know you know.
Yeah.
So I think I was talking to Kate Lopez, who's our senior director of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
She's great.
Yes, she is.
And she's been with the hospital for 5 years, was on the agency side before coming to the hospital. And so we were just I was going over questions with her and kind of getting her thoughts. And I said, one piece of advice I think is be a good listener. So be in the room and listen to what people are saying and be able to kind of piece it together, because that will help you in the long run tell the story and know what's important and be value added. It's interesting being a non-clinical person in a room of clinicians all the time. It's sometimes they talk their own language. Healthcare especially talks its own language.
Sure.
And I always go back to my chief nurse, Leanne, who I love, and she's like, well, just take ibuprofen. I'm like, just tell me, is that Advil or is it Tylenol? What do I need to take? She's like, how can you not know that? Right. So be a good listener. And then I think the other thing for people, just whatever career they're going into, just coming out of college and going into a new career, always raise your hand and be the one to like say, well, maybe I don't know how to do that, but I want to learn, or can I try, or volunteer to do something. And I think that's advice I would give my children as well. If you're working 9 to 5, work a little later to try to learn something new. And those are the traits that I look for as a leader in new staff coming up. The people who don't say no, even if they don't know how to do it, they want to continue to grow and evolve. And I think that's one of a quality that I look for in younger staff.
Sure. We here at Copy and Art, we have an emphasis on what we consider or say is 2% better every day. And we like to tell the team, this is where you are and this is where you could be. If you just go 2%, and then 2% and 2%, and then you project yourself out years later, you're in 2 different spots, right? It's that continual kind of improvement, irrespective of whether they're, a junior or a seasoned executive, right? Because I think one of the things we find helpful in marketing, and especially healthcare marketing, is the ability to innovate, because things are moving so quickly with respect to innovation and the way that marketing is evolving, that if you're kind of stuck in doing just print journal ads, you've missed the boat. We're coming into 2022. Like, this entire field is going to be completely different in 5 years. So if you're kind of stuck in your ways or married to what you've always done, you're probably not going to be successful as you could be if you were just thinking about that 2% and how you can, to your point, add value to clients, but definitely staying with your finger on the pulse to where this industry is going, which is very, very different from where it was 5 years ago, and especially 10 years ago. So
100%. And I think I wrote down one of the things that I think about as a personality trait of mine is the ability to continually think out of the box, right? So it's and motivate the team to think out of the box and not be status quo, because we know there's always going to be someone who can run faster, spend more money,
might be smarter,
right? So what's our competitive edge? It's the ability to say, okay, let's do a strategic planning session, which the team does every year, and looks forward to 2022. What do we need to think about? What did we learn, and how do we continue to do something that's different before someone else catches on and spends more money and gets credit for all the things that we innovated on? But
sure.
But that's okay. What do they say? Flattery is the best form of
imitation
is the best form of flattery.
Yes. 100%.
We have fun doing that too, so we can relate. Those brainstorming sessions when people are vibing off of one another and one person says one thing and it just sparks the next person to say something else. I think making people feel comfortable too, right? That there is no wrong answer. If you throw out an idea, there's no bad idea. We're in a very safe environment here, and only phenomenal ideas can come out of whatever we brainstorm. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not, in marketing, as far as I'm concerned, it's not always something that's rocket science, right? So this is a good example. People are doing podcasts. Why they're doing all audio is beyond me. YouTube is all the rage. Video is everything in marketing. Why you can't set up a couple of cameras and have somebody connect from a video perspective, let's say they're not in their car, on Spotify or some other iPod kind of platform, if they are at home and they want to watch it, that's a very simple 2% shift that causes exponential improvement. So sometimes it's something as simple as, wait, how do we take this thing we're doing well and just add a little element that's going to kind of like blow it up? And I love those kind of, but you talked to me about your kids, and I think one of the interesting aspects, so you are a mom, and we did talk a little bit about that because everybody sitting at the table here are moms and successful executives, and I'm personally always fascinated by human stories and executive stories and women's stories. So tell us a little bit about who you are outside of White Plains Hospital.
Sure. So I, as you mentioned, I have 3 children. They're all teenagers, which is kind of crazy. It happens in a blink of an eye, really. It does. And my oldest daughter will be 20 this year, which, like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so she's a sophomore at college and loving it this year after she graduated in 2020. So there was no prom, there was no senior trip, there was no graduation. So, and then even her freshman year of college, she only had 1 class in person, and this was the second semester. And it was yoga.
Well, I mean, at least yoga's good, but not exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she's really immersed and loves school at this point in time, and
That's awesome.
yeah. So happy kids, happy mom, right?
Yes.
That's what we say.
Yes.
My middle daughter is a high school senior, so back in the thick of college applications and college visits and essay writing and stress. So we're taking it day by day. Some days duck and cover, some days
You're all in, you're
some
full
days
on.
whatever it takes. And then my baby is my 15-year-old son, who's a sophomore in high school and the tallest person in the house. And I am sitting, but I am not the tallest person
I am
in the
not
room.
tallest person.
And so, my son is taller than my husband, and
Oh, wow.
and days he walks downstairs, and I'm like, who is this man?
Yeah.
Who is
That
this
deep voice
man?
come from?
Right.
Yes, I understand.
So very blessed and very lucky in a lot of ways with my family. My husband actually was formerly in television news, which is how we met.
So we might look a little different one segment to the next. Of course, as work would have it, we had to cut our last interview short with Dawn French, but we are happy to be back together again with you, continuing where we left off.
I always think it's a fun story. So my first career was in journalism news. I was a television producer. I left a TV station in Providence where I kind of grew up with my broadcast career and moved to a station, a cable station in upstate New York, in Kingston, New York. And I was the executive producer of news there. And my now husband was the talent, we'll say. And so I that's how we met. And I always say it's a little broadcast news where I would be on the IFB in the control room saying, after the break, this is what we're going to do and this is what you're going to say. And then we'd come back from the break and he would do something completely different. So then I'd be yelling in his ear in the IFB, and he'd pop out the IFB, and and so ultimately, knowing that there was no way we could ever work together and be married, I kind of left the television industry for a bit. When we got serious, got engaged, had kids, I stayed home for a blink with my daughters when they were little, and then fell into healthcare. And really couldn't imagine doing anything other than healthcare now. So, and that was, I guess, 15 years ago, which is,
wow.
I know that's crazy.
Amazing.
It really is crazy. So healthcare is my second career, but built a lot on my background as a journalist and a writer and a communicator and a storyteller, right? So everything that we do in marketing and communications, I really try to go back to, looking at it from the consumer's point of view of what's going to make me pay attention to this, or even doing a lecture for the community. When we think about what's going to make me not go home to my family at 6 o'clock and go to this lecture, how are you really selling it to me in a way that there's value add and content that I can't just Google online? What am I going to get that's kind of that sitting in the room or being on a Zoom experience that I can't just find out for myself? And I really credit a lot of that thinking back to my television news days.
That's amazing. That's a great story, and I think that value add is so important in today's day and age. Going back to when you first started, if you think back or see where you are now, what's one piece of advice you wish you had or you would tell someone, yourself included, back then as you were just starting out in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially as I have teenage kids and a daughter who's approaching 20 in a couple of months. And I think it's, never let your title define you as you're starting out. Figure out who you want to be and what you want to do, and hopefully you're in a role that encourages that and allows that to happen. And I don't know many managers who would say, no, don't do more.
Right.
Right? And
don't come in early.
Right. Don't come in early. Don't stay late. Don't do extra. Don't, yes. I think all of those things are really important, and I would encourage my 18-year-old self or my children who are that and close to that to kind of think that way as they enter their career. It's kind of vision who you want to be and what you want to be, and then just figure out how to get there, right? Don't be defined by what the title is. Don't be put in a box necessarily, and just work really hard and add value as much as you can, because I do. Back to no one saying, don't come in early, don't stay late, don't be creative, don't think out of the box, right?
We always say here, dress for the position you want, and it's not actually dress as an appearance-wise, but act like the position you want. So if you want to, whatever it is that you're trying to attain, pretend you're there and do what it takes to be there, and also do your job, but also do what it takes to be there, because I think that's so important for as people grow in the professional ranks to understand.
I love that you said that, because it reminded me, I actually got that specific advice when I was working in television news just out of college. My news director said, dress for the part, and that's something that stuck with me, and I think it's great advice.
Yeah, I think sometimes people, younger people who might not have been kind of taught, because these skills aren't taught in school. They might think, well, when I get the thing, I'll behave in the way. And really, you don't get the thing until you have successfully done whatever you're looking to achieve. Like, life doesn't reward you. Careers often won't reward you until you're proving that you're the thing versus, it coming at some later time. So I think that's great. Now, on that same vein, I'm really, and I use the word fascinated, but I really am. I'm fascinated by the rituals that successful people have. So to the extent that you can, tell me about what are some of your personal rituals that you feel contribute to your personal kind of success? That could be career, that could be just the way you walk into a room. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a great question. I think really recently, during the pandemic, I realized, I need to be a little more grounded. Everything around us was so frenetic, especially in healthcare. It was nonstop. I'm not saving lives, right? I'm not a clinical person, and I give so much credit to everyone who is on the front lines, but our role in the communication department was to support them any way that we could, and really to help lift the spirits as they were facing long, hard days. And so for me, I started to meditate, and I had started it a little before, and when I say meditate, I creative people, I think it's hard to sit still sometimes.
Sure.
And so, you do what's right for you and how much you can do, and it's 5 to 10 minutes. Sure. And making that a routine. And I tried to get my family to do it prior to the pandemic. That didn't go so well. But I tried.
That's hard.
But I tried.
And you're ambitious.
And you have to be in the right mind.
State, sure.
And I've actually brought my husband along, so which is great. Because it's something he never would have ever considered probably 5 years ago. And now I've kind of, teased him a little bit, and he's done it with me. And now I actually think he finds value in it. So I do a little bit of meditation. I'd like to say I'm a diehard exerciser, but I'm not. But I do know just walking, like I walk every day. Our kind of ritual is we walk the dog, right? After work, or sometimes in the morning before walk. It's a way to kind of connect and just talk about the day and do a quick little regrounding on family life at a certain point. So those are some of my rituals. Is that kind of what you had in mind?
I mean, I'm always very curious because, research supports that successful people have rituals. Not always the same rituals, of course, but, kind of, they try to go to bed at the same time. They try to get up at the same time. They tend to get up earlier than most. And they do have some sort of physical activity that they do, and some sort of prayer meditation. But I just like to see kind of what the commonalities are.
And there are commonalities, and then there are just interesting things that people have that are uniqueness about them that they find to be helpful first thing in the morning. So I think it's a range as well. Yeah.
And I think it's an evolution, right? So totally. So my next thing is, okay, how can I get my closet in order? Right? I was reading something yesterday where there's as people are going back into the workplace, how do you think about getting yourself ready? And there's a lot of anxiety because you've been wearing sweats for the last 20 months, and you haven't had to worry so much about getting dressed. And so the article was talking about how getting your closet in order and picking out your outfits for the whole week, which is not something that I do.
Okay.
But it sounds like a great idea. And back to my husband, he's very ritualistic in the sense that he, every night before he goes to bed, he picks out his outfit down to his socks and his watch and his shoes, all organized, and like that's his thing.
Wow.
So I don't know, we'll see.
Well, how do you set yourself up for tomorrow, today?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that helps.
And I think it also, as I know for me, I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking of all the things you haven't done, right? Yeah. So it's like, how can you close the box on all those things that you haven't done, so you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night thinking about them?
Sure.
Get a good night's sleep. So it's whatever that list is, if it's your outfit or the big project that's pending, the more you can button up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And then personally, being a working mom, it's always challenging. I'm not home for dinner a lot of nights with my kids, and Sunday night is our family dinner night. So we cook, we have dinner together, we watch 60 Minutes. It's like, that's our thing.
That's our thing. Sure.
That's our routine. And it gives me a little bit of a settling in for the week, touching base with my people, knowing what they have ahead for the week, which helps me kind of not worry about it and be last minute and help them prioritize.
Yeah, we've run into each other at the American Heart Association. Yeah. I think that it's always interesting to know from a philanthropic perspective, what are your other kind of either, pulls in the community outside of like what you do for work and home, which are probably your two primaries. But what else are you involved in that help fulfill and kind of round you out as a human?
Yeah. So I love the American Heart Association, and it's part of the reason why I love it is because I've been able to meet so many great women in the network of Go Red for Women. I am co-chairing Go Red for Women again in 2021-22.
Awesome.
I'm really excited about it. It's just such a great cause and so important to me. You know, I have a family history of heart disease, and just this past year, my father had a massive heart attack and cardiac arrest, and amazingly survived.
Wow.
He's really the miracle man, we call him, and he just started driving again after 6 months this week. So he's really happy, and my mom's really happy.
Yeah.
That's great that he's independent.
She's not driving him everywhere anymore.
Sure.
That's great.
But so it's a cause very, professionally working in a hospital, and we're building a cardiac program. Professionally, it makes a lot of sense for me, but also personally, it's a cause that's really important to me. And they're a very well-organized organization and just have a lot of structure. So I'm on the board for the American Heart Association and then co-chairing Go Red for Women. I also am on the board of Arts Westchester, and I love that. I feel that art is so important to the healing process and so therapeutic in so many different ways.
They have an event coming up.
They do. They have their gala at the end of November.
Yes, I just got some promotional material on it.
It's great. And the hospital has sponsored the Artsmobile. So we partnered with Janet Langsam, who's the CEO of Arts Westchester, and said, what can we do together? How can we get out to the community? And so we created this van that has been tremendously successful. And what it does is it brings art to different communities and places where arts funding in some of the schools have been cut back. So we'll go to the housing authority, we'll go to the senior center. We go through all throughout Westchester. And when I say we, not me, but the Artsmobile and artists.
You're enabling it.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's been a great program as well, and happy to be part of that board as well. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you have your we have an event coming up, right? We're Plains Hospital, right? The Mariana Rivera on Tuesday.
On
We're going to be
Tuesday.
there. We'll be on the tennis court.
We'll
be on the
That's so awesome.
Yes, we
Thank
will be
you.
there supporting.
Thank you for
Of
supporting.
course.
That's so great.
Of course.
Good
I don't
to
want to
have fun,
embarrass
too.
myself on the golf course, although I have been known to do it. Sleepy Hollow was very fun.
Yes.
At one of the.
But we're excited to be on the tennis courts.
Yes, please.
Tennis is more my speed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not that I'm a good tennis player either, but
That's where you'll
can hold
find
our
us
own.
on
We can hold
Tuesday,
our
though. Happy to support. Tell us a little bit about that event.
so this year is a little different than usual years because in years past it's been a celebrity golf tournament. So every foursome has had a celebrity golfing with them, which has been a lot of fun for the participants.
Yes.
So there's a group called the Friends of White Plains Hospital, which was formerly the auxiliary from years gone by, and it's a group of volunteers in the community who feel passionate about the hospital and are out there fundraising and talking it up. And we're so lucky to have that kind of grassroots energy and commitment out in the community. And so they decided they wanted to partner with our golf committee and bring tennis this year and cards. So it's tennis and cards, which is additional to the golf event. And I looked at the weather. It's supposed to be 73 and beautiful. So
We can't wait.
it's going to be a picture perfect day. So I'm jealous. I will not be playing tennis, but wish.
Oh.
Wish. But I will be there later in the afternoon, early evening for the dinner. There's a dinner at the end of the night, which is fun.
Yes.
So and Mariano Rivera has been a great partner of the hospital for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now
Wow.
this
Yes.
golf
Great
tournament.
philanthropist, yeah.
And we've partnered. His wife is a pastor at a church in New Rochelle. And so over the years, we've partnered with them. They do a kind of a back to school day for the kids in the community where they do backpacks loaded with all the school supplies.
love
And
it.
we've added on health screenings and health education and going to the community to provide those services for them the same day, which has been really great.
Sure.
COVID, we haven't done. Last year was a buy year for everything. I said to someone the other day, I can't believe next year's 2022. I just can't get my
It's
head
like we
around
lost
it.
time.
I feel like I want 2020 to be a redo.
Redo.
Yeah.
I agree.
A do-over.
If there's a vote, I'm voting with you. Yes. Yes. So maybe my favorite part of the conversation with you today, Dawn, is talking about the future, Dawn, and what your goals and dreams are. Before we go there, we transition by just asking a little bit about a trend in marketing that you're excited about. Something, it could be a program you're working on or just something that you might be interested in your field. But then I want to know a little bit more about what you still have ahead of you and what you're looking forward to that way.
That's a good question. So I'll start with the easy stuff.
Good.
I think one of our kind of advantages at White Plains Hospital is the fact that a lot of what we do is very horizontal and not siloed, meaning everyone kind of works together as a team across different departments, because that's the only way you can accomplish the full potential, right? Without people working against each other, it's collaborative, it's supportive. We have organizational goals that all the senior leaders have the same organizational goals. So I have a quality goal that, really the clinical people impact, but I need to support them however I can. And, I sit next to the chief nurse and the CFO around the table. So we all work together in the department, in the marketing and communication department. So it's the marketing team, the communication team, the community relation team, and I also oversee the volunteers and work really collaboratively with the foundation, the fundraising arm of the hospital.
Sure.
Back to my news days, everything that we do that we can build on together, and I can't remember if I said this when we were talking the first time around, but something like people get 5,000 messages a day. What's going to break through? How are you going to get noticed? And I'm sure it's even more now when you think about all the social media and how quickly people's attention spans are. So I think one of the things that we try to do and really, I believe, makes an impact is the layering effect. So if we come up with a strategy, it's not just a one-off of this is what we're going to do for the advertising campaign. This is what the advertising campaign looks like. This is what the communication and publication and public relations strategy looks like. And this is how we're going to support it with community outreach. And any way that we can be additive to that, you're just building on that air cover that's out there.
It's like an omni-channel approach to your high-level strategies.
Right, absolutely. And I always say in healthcare, it's not that someone drives by a billboard and says, oh, well, if I get that disease, that's the doctor I'm going to, right? It doesn't work like that. A lot of times it's all the referrals and how do you build that awareness and kind of grassroots kind of energy around whatever you're trying to promote or whomever you're trying to promote. We do Health Matters, which is a magazine that is sent out across Westchester, and it's a print magazine. It's always how do you measure it, and sometimes it's hard versus digital where you can say, okay, this is how many people click, this is how long they spent, this is what the click-through rate, right? All of those metrics. And for Health Matters, I was talking to a doctor, an orthopedic surgeon that we're bringing on board, and he's coming from a hospital in southern Westchester in New York City, and I was talking about Health Matters, and he said, oh yeah, that works. Last time you did something with one of your orthopedic doctors, I had patients bring in the article to ask me if I could do this procedure this way, which is I mean, that's great, right?
Sure.
It works.
Definitely.
But
I can tell you it works personally.
It does work.
Yeah.
It's just not as measurable.
Yes.
So it's part of a campaign, and that's why I think digital has caught on the way it has, is because advertisers wanted to see analytics and they wanted to see ROI, and it's very difficult to capture comparatively speaking, but of course it works.
Yeah.
Right.
And especially when you think about the different generations that consume our marketing materials. Yep. My mom would rather read, in a lot of ways, I would rather read paper, right?
I still buy books.
I buy books. Yes, I want to touch them. I have tablets and devices. I want to feel
read
a book.
the pages.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important and does work. So
Yeah, and especially with health issues, we can serve up the digital ads, but then it doesn't mean, or do a billboard, or it's all the air cover that you need to be out there, but it doesn't mean that someone's going to need orthopedic surgery when they see it. Okay. So we've developed and worked with different platforms to try to figure out who's the right audience for a specific service. So if I'll just stick with orthopedics. If we're looking to promote orthopedics, there's analytics out there that you can pull and develop a look-alike profile, whether it's online or in a direct mail capacity, to say, okay, it looks as if this person fits a profile of someone who may need this service. So let's serve them up the digital ads, but also hit them with the direct mail and the overall air cover advertising, whether it's television, radio, print, combination of all. That's always exciting. I love being able to connect the dots and kind of have the here's what we're trying to accomplish, and this is when it works. Great thing about digital is pretty quickly if it works or it doesn't, and you can pivot and say, all right, we need to do something a little different. This isn't performing at the levels of our last campaign or something else. And we did that recently. We have a campaign out there, and I think we talked a little bit about it before, about our overall kind of wellness and prevention campaign and our cardiac campaign. The cardiac campaign, both were similar. Driving to a website to complete a quiz and understand your risk. The cardiac campaign was really outperforming the general health campaign. So we took a look at that, said, what do we need to be doing differently? How do we enhance some of the key phrases around that? And already have seen some positive. Yeah.
And that's a great thing, right? It's easy to kind of test, measure, reevaluate, put it out there again, test, measure, and it's kind of like a process you can repeat that doesn't drag on for months or a year while you kind of gather that metrics and then have to readjust everything and then move from there. So that digital is faster. You can course correct at a faster pace as well.
Which is more cost efficient.
Yeah.
So, which is great. So I love that. I love that part of it. I think the other thing that I really like is what's next, right? How do we keep innovating? How do we keep because we're part of the Montefiore Health System, but really our marketing team does its own thing, and we have the ability to be nimble and flexible and kind of challenge my team every year. Okay, well, we did this and that's great, but now what's next? And how do what are we not thinking of, or what can we think of differently? As media options are really, there's not a tremendous amount of media options in Westchester County. You have Westchester Magazine, you have News 12, the Journal News a little bit. There's not a lot of opportunity for editorial media kind of opportunities. So how do we think about that in a way that we have so much content, we have so many doctors doing so many amazing things and continue to grow? How do we get our story out there in different ways? And we've done a lot of sponsored content where we're writing blogs anyway. How do we put them into these hyper-local publications to get to the different communities?
Sure.
Because I think people do pick up the newspaper that comes, the Rye Record that comes to your mailbox, right? Or the Harrison Herald, or wherever you live. Every community has that local newspaper, and you might not read it front to back. You might not read it every single edition, but you pick it up and you look, is my kid in there? Or do I know someone's kid who's in there? And you flip through. So making health content consumer friendly, I think, is really important, because no one wants to read dense health content. Right. News you can use. So that was back to my news days. News you could use. What is this?
And also aligns with your wellness campaign, right? Which is like, people are very interested in how they can stay out of a hospital. So any content that adds value and like preventative measures, people are always kind of reading as well, which I think is great that you're adding to that, because you're right. You can't exactly hit someone when you know they broke their leg and now they're deciding, and maybe you're hitting them then, but maybe you're not. But wellness is an effective tool to kind of
build that
connection, relationship.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's in the hospital's mission statement for 100 and I don't know what, around 128, 129 years, something like that. Is caring for our community beyond the hospital walls. And that's something that we try to do, and that wellness message and prevention message is so important, especially now. I think it really resonates with people.
Yes.
There's so much. I saw a headline the other day in some e-newsletter about wellness travel is like the hot travel now, because people want to focus on being outdoors, keeping themselves healthy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like you want them to walk into White Plains Hospital, but not through the ER.
Yes.
Right.
You want them to have that connection with the institution, so that when the moment comes, if they ever are in crisis, that's the name they know. They feel comfortable. They have some connection already.
Right.
And that's, I think, what for us on the creative side is exciting, because that's a challenge if you think about it. Trying to build a connection with a community that might not be ER ready or sick or in some sort of a crisis mode, to connect with an institution that's scary and there might be some negative memories there. So like that and we're always up for a challenge, but that's one of the things I personally find fascinating about that work.
Yes.
Yeah. You're right. A lot of it is that air cover, because you don't know what one individual needs at that moment in time.
Right.
And it's creating great experiences when they do come to the hospital. And
Sure.
so how do you build that patient loyalty is through our culture and our experience that leads to a differentiator. And I truly believe it, that, you want to go to a place where people aren't checking boxes and say, okay, I went in, I gave the patient the meds, I checked this, I did that. You have to be aware of
The human aspect.
and all those, there are subtleties in everything that happen, and every interaction with people. And being in a hospital is not an ideal experience for most people, and it's all those little touch points that really make a difference, and that you remember, and you leave, and then you say, my gosh, that was an incredible experience. Yes, I didn't want to be in the hospital. I was reading a grateful patient letter before I came here, and she was talking about she went to urgent care. The urgent care doctor sent her to the emergency department. She's like, it was the last place I wanted to be, but I really think the hospital saved my life. And usually people write to complain, but I'm writing to tell you just how special everything was, and here are the people who were just above and beyond.
Absolutely.
And we get letters like that all the time, and I always say that's the best marketing we have.
Ever.
Yes, ever.
This is what
The
this is
best
what we push
patient
our clients
great,
to do. It's like,
great
let them
patient-
tell it.
Yes.
Let them tell it.
Right.
Um,
And when they feel that passionately about it, they're telling all their friends, and
Sure.
they're, and you're a real human being, not a person on a billboard. You're someone that I know. And our ad campaigns, we try to do that. I mean, Westchester's 1 million people, but I feel like so many people know someone who's been in our ad campaigns or can connect
Sure.
somehow, some way, and that makes it real, right? It's not just some generic testimonial, but it's I know Dawn, and that's amazing. I saw that advertisement, and I believe what she said, and so those
Yes,
great patient
absolutely.
stories are great.
Definitely. They communicate the human side. People see themselves in either the patient or the, whoever is referring to the patient. And they can say, like, I'm going to feel that way when I walk in that hospital.
Yeah.
So I think those patient testimonials are very powerful.
And the research supports it. I think when you look at the marketing analytics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you can have a patient kind of, successfully tell an authentic story about your institution, I would argue there's nothing more powerful. And I feel like that is hopefully the future of healthcare marketing, in terms of, because this is a segment, we're in the future segment here. And I think I'd love a lot less kind of contrived marketing, and a focus more on authenticity, because these days you can say whatever you want about White Plains Hospital, right? Somebody's going to walk through the doors and your people are going to say the story, and your patients will eventually live that story.
It has to be true.
It has to be true.
real, or it's built on a house of cards, and it's just a matter of time before it falls apart, right?
Yes.
And I think that's been something that, back to that, working horizontally across the organization, it all has to be interconnected, because if it's not, then I can go out there saying whatever in advertisement, but if we're not living it and it's not our culture, it's going to be very apparent very quickly.
Sure.
I work really closely with the chief nursing officer on the patient experience, because it's like the best marketing we have is a great patient experience. And it goes so far, and it keeps patients coming back and choosing White Plains Hospital. So
I agree. So I'm very curious about your future, your goals. You've accomplished so much. You have such a kind of successful, active life at the moment. Tell us a little bit about what you're hoping for the future for yourself, what your dreams are.
that's a good question. Who has time to have dreams? I currently am just hoping to survive the next few months with a high school senior. True story. Living through one high school senior. I know how stressful it can be, so right now that's like priority one is getting my daughter to feel good about wherever it is that she lands. And I believe that she'll land in the place that she's supposed to be.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's kind of short term, hopefully short term. It might be longer term than I hope, but we'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
Okay.
And then surviving my sophomore son. That's my Yes, he'll be home alone with me and his father next year, so that will be a full-time endeavor. I don't know that he's ready for that.
Yeah. Are you?
Yeah. I am.
Okay,
I am. I think it's like any working mother is, how do you juggle it? How do you prioritize it? How do you know when you are needed a little more, and when you're at home, and when you're needed a little more at work?
Sure.
And I think some of that is just experience and age, and being able to
communication,
being able to look in the rear view mirror. But and communication, and just knowing when they're looking at you and telling you something, but it's not true.
The explicit versus the implicit.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Reading both.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Yes.
having a support system that you can like text and validate, like, oh, this is what I heard. Is this what you heard?
Yeah.
Totally.
Which is great. So, I think over the next couple of years, I always said little kids, physical energy. When they were younger, it was so much physical energy where you had to put them in their shoes and put them in the car seat and take them out and as they get older, it's a lot more mental lifting, heavy mental lifting that you kind of deal with. Yeah. So and I'm fortunate, my kids are good, knock on wood, but so that's kind of my.
So wait, so are we a couple of years from being empty nesters?
We're 2 years from being
So
empty
what
nesters.
do you think about what that means for you?
I do. So a couple of random thoughts in my head. I decided on a whim that I was going to take a pottery making class.
Okay.
Oh,
wow. So that starts in, I think, the end of October.
I love it.
At the Clay Center?
At the Clay
Yes,
Art Center.
yes,
Have you taken
okay.
any classes there?
I have not. My daughter has taken a few open sessions there, but I'm always intrigued by a pottery wheel, but I've never actually attempted it since I was about 8.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah.
I just think of the movie Ghost, and
Yes.
we won't say anything else.
My husband is not joining. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It is the pottery wheel, and it's like a 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock
curious.
class,
I'm so
which
curious
is a
to see
long
what you think.
commitment
Yes.
from 10 to 1 on a Saturday.
I think it's gonna fly by though. and
We'll
you're going to
see.
have a great time.
But it's okay, something new, something different.
That's great.
I love it.
Kind of keep you always learning and growing and
Yes.
evolving. Right, wrong, and different. I don't know, but I'll try it.
Super fun.
And then I kind of keep toying with this idea of should I be learning how to golf? And
Yes.
I
Do it.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
You both golf?
So we had another let's say a charity event at a golf club recently, and we usually sponsor and attend but don't golf because I don't golf. And then we decided that we were going to
Try that.
we were going to golf because you have to try. So we got a couple of instructors, and where did we go? What was that public golf course?
Saxon Woods.
Saxon
we went over
Woods.
to Saxon Woods to try.
And we had a couple of different instructors. It was so
Fun.
much fun
We had a great time.
that I
Yes.
went to Dick's that next weekend. I bought clubs. My husband's like, "Are we doing this really?" I have golf balls. I have the best outfits. Like we
Yes, we looked like we should golf.
we
yes.
and we were put on a foursome, and
Yes.
the guys had nothing to compliment. So he was like, "That is a visor. That's a killer visor."
It's hard.
It's
It's
really
very
hard. It's so much fun.
It takes consistent practice, I think, like
Yes.
long-term consistent practice.
Does your
to-
husband golf?
My husband
Oh.
he golfs every weekend.
So that could be something
Yeah.
also that's
And
I don't
fun.
know that he
Yeah.
wants me to golf with him. I think that was so 20 years ago,
right.
and now he's like
I
kind
don't
of
know.
like, "You're gonna
Yeah.
slow me down." He's a good golfer now.
Yes.
And
no,
so-
but sometimes husbands want
Yes.
to
Yes,
like
the bonding.
be
Yes.
better too, also, and teach us something, right? Especially if you're in
Oh, yeah.
a very kind of partnership
Yes.
like position with your husband
Yeah.
versus up or down, where they can teach you and get on a golf. It's like, oh, let me show you. I don't know.
your son golf?
If we're voting, I vote.
Yes.
I vote golf.
Yeah, so I do
Totally.
have some other friends who have said, I wish I learned to golf 20 years ago.
It's so much fun.
As they've got into retirement age, and that's what.
I think
You
it's a
have
great
time,
sport because
right?
you can also play till you're 85. Like
That's
you can play
right.
golf at a lot of different levels. You can be, a professional golfer. You can be an amateur but an amazing golfer, and I think you can also be 87 and on the golf course playing 4 holes with your friends before you meet for lunch.
Yep.
But wasn't
So-
it just fun to learn
It was,
and
and it's
play
nice to be outside. It's
and it
nice
was
to be
great to be
outside.
outside.
And I think the good thing about golf is, obviously, if you're playing with an expert, there are many rules to follow. But we kind of did what we could do on the golf course and did our best, and it worked for us.
We apologize to the guys on
We
the team
did,
in
yes.
advance. I just
But
said,
we did help them win a hole or two, so
Yes.
that was
Excellent.
a contribution.
it was so funny.
That's great. Good for
Yeah.
you both.
Yes.
Well, you know what? I think there's also something in being a student and remaining a student of life and things.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you actually reach kind of cool levels of success, sometimes we get comfortable in our success and we are very experienced and we've been doing this 20 years and all that. And so to become an amateur again, there's something about like that process. I know I was nervous and slightly embarrassed at my lessons, and that's perfect because
You're out of your comfort zone a little.
Yes,
It's
and your
good to be
brain
out of your
starts-
comfort zone
your
a
circle
little
gets
sometimes.
bigger.
and your
That's-
circle gets
yes.
bigger.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
had so much fun at the event that we
Great time.
sponsored, and it was so funny because, of course, you know this because you have sponsors for your events. So, of course, we were supposed to get a hole, and this is Sleepy Hollow Golf Club, and we don't see our logo anywhere, and so we're making a joke about it. Then we just keep going. And then the guys are like, it was a guy's shot and a girl's shot. So the guys come back and they were like, "You're copying our advertising." We're like, "Yeah, you've been with us all day." They're like, "Your logo was at the last hole. Let's go take a picture."
that's
and
so
it was
cute.
so
Yeah.
funny.
That's great.
Yeah.
Of course, it was the one hole we didn't take, but
Yes.
it
It was still.
That's a beautiful course
was
too.
beautiful.
It really
so
is.
much fun. But I think the point of it was we tried something new, and it was so much fun. And I have a golf club not far from my house, and I said to my husband, I'm like, I think I want to go continue. And he was like, I think let's do it. So
That's great.
I'd vote for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me
So
too.
So I'm not committing,
Yes.
but it's in my head, and
You have time to
you've
percolate.
upped it a notch,
Yes.
so I appreciate
Yes.
that. But I'm still not
Now,
telling
for
my
son
husband.
golf, it could be a good way
I
to,
think
for
he'd
the
love
next
it.
2 years
So-
for the three of you to bond. Yes.
yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah.
That's an idea. My son does golf, and my older daughter does golf. Or she did golf in high school. She was on the varsity golf team, and my
Oh,
husband
wow.
and I were just talking about it last night. He said she would have been the best out of the three kids. She could have really been a good golfer, and I think she has the foundation that later in life she'll pick it up.
yeah.
And then my middle child, my daughter, is a tennis player. So
Yes, that is my
Another
favorite
good
so
life
sport.
so a
Another
little
good
bit of
life
that.
skill.
Yes. Yeah. Although I can't play with her because she's so much better than me. But she's so cute. She's like, "You're doing great, mommy."
I love it.
So
That's fabulous.
Whereas my older daughter would be like, "You're awful. I'm not playing with you anymore."
Game over.
Yeah, exactly. They're
Yes.
each different.
Yes.
Same house,
And that's
same
what keeps
parents,
us moving.
each
That's
different.
what keeps us moving,
Yes.
right?
That's right. So it sounds like you have some ideas for the future and what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think, I'm never the person to do a lot of nothing. I always have to be, what's my next project? Even if it's, okay, let's clean out the closet or organize the pantry or whatever
Yeah.
it might be. There's always a project in my house that I'm doing, and something else that I'm not good being idle. That's for sure.
Sure. Well, I have to say, it's been lovely getting to know you, and I thank you so much for letting the audience see a little bit more of the inside. If they're Westchester, they know your name.
Well, there is another Dawn French, the famous Dawn French. You know this. You know this.
I mean, you're the famous Dawn French as far as I'm concerned. Who do we want to talk about?
There's a
Dawn?
British comedian who is Dawn French.
okay.
So
I was not aware.
yes, you'll have to
She's
to
not very
Google
big
her.
in the Westchester marketing
No,
scene.
definitely nothing to
You
do with
definitely trumped her
Westchester.
there.
Well, thank you.
Well, it was great. I don't know if you know this, but we also want to get better, and we're excited about the future of Copy and Art. We're actually moving offices to a much bigger and brighter and more sophisticated
Yes.
office in 2022, and we'll have a actual broadcast room. And so hopefully you'll come back, and maybe we can kind of see how the first quarter
great.
22 is going for you. But we're so excited that you came here twice. And hopefully we'll
This
do
was
that
so
again.
fun. Really,
Thank you so
I
much
had
for
I had a
joining
great
us.
time. So
Awesome,
thank you so much
awesome.
for having me.
Thank you. This is
excited.
Inside Copy and Art.